Did the Gonsalveses leave that meeting satisfied?
I don't, when you're not get all of your questions answered, obviously you're not satisfied. So it's one of those things where we're hopeful and we're optimistic. And, we want them to catch the person that committed these crimes.
Sidebar's Angenette Levy sits down with Shannon Gray, the attorney for the family of slain University of Idaho student Kaylee Goncalves, one of 4 people brutally stabbed to death. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We are continuing our coverage of the University of Idaho murder investigation, the quadruple killings of 21-year-old Kaylee Goncalves, 21-year-old Madison Mogan, 20-year-old Zana Kernodle, and 20-year-old Ethan Chapin. Their bodies were found in their off-campus rental home out in the college town of Moscow. They were stabbed to death. It is a horrible, unsolved crime. And in this 4th week, we still have no arrests, no suspects, no recovered weapon. However, Angenette Levy, my co-host here on Sidebar, had the chance to interview Shannon Gray, the attorney for the family of Kaylee Goncalves. Now, we know that the Goncalves family, particularly Kaylee's father, Stephen, has been quite vocal with the media about his frustrations with the progress of this case. He had mentioned that they hired a private investigator, and I even recall when he announced that they planned to hire a lawyer. I'd say the basic concern that he has expressed is a lack of transparency from law enforcement and miscommunications. But before we get into any of that, Angenette first asked Mr. Gray, how's the family doing?
They're in grief, they're grieving. They're trying to handle and manage a lot of things. And, they've hired me to kind of guide them through this criminal justice process and how complicated it is. If you've never been involved in it before, then you don't know anything about it. You don't know the questions to ask, things like that. They've gotten probably 20 to 25 media requests a day. And they still have to live their lives. They have to work, they have to raise their other children, they have to do those things. And so, it's been, the family and I are a team. We work together, and I'm just helping them through this process. So.
And that is completely understandable. And I also want to mention something else that Mr. Gray brought up, and it's important. And that is the intense criticism that has been leveled at the Goncalves family, particularly Mr. Goncalves, because what we've been seeing online and even on media outlets are people taking aim at him specifically. And while there is perhaps a legitimate question about whether a victim's family member should be revealing information to the world during this sensitive time in an investigation, it's a whole other thing for people to come up and attack and harass him. There are even rumors online suggesting the worst. They're accusing him of being involved in what happened, which is just absolutely terrible. So before we go any further into this interview, I think it is very important to hear what Mr. Gray had to say about that.
The families are going through a tragedy right now, and it's emotional, it's raw, and there are some media outlets that are picking apart interviews that the Goncalves family has done, Steve or anyone else. And I would like to say that, if you are in a position where you are going after the families of individuals that their daughter was murdered, you need to take a real hard look at yourself and not do that anymore. The other part of it is that there shouldn't be news platforms that are giving those people talking points, and that they need to be aware of those things. So, they can say whatever they want, because we should show some compassion, some kindness, and some understanding towards all of the victims' families through this really troubling time that they're going through. It's a story for a lot of people, but it's a life. This is a life tragedy for the families. So just making people aware of that.
All right, so now let's get into the frustrations with law enforcement. Between not releasing enough information about what is happening or this mixed messaging, this has led to people losing confidence in the authorities. And this has also spawned conspiracy theories. Sometimes when you don't have enough information, there's too much information. Well, Mr. Gray talked about meeting with the different members of law enforcement and these authorities, and here's what happened.
Well, we had a meeting with the investigators on Monday. The investigators, the prosecutor, Chief Fry was there, as a few other people in the room. And, our theme going into that was accountability and communication. Accountability, meaning that a lot of the information that had gotten out had been inconsistent and confusing, not only to the families, but also to, I think, the public. You had the coroner making statements. You had the Bill Thompson, the prosecutor, making statements about targeting, and then that was walked back by Chief Fry in another statement. You had Art Bedke, within a day or two, making statements about crime of passion, and so a lot of inconsistencies in that. Consistency promotes trust, and so part of our theme going in was that you need to there needs to be some accountability within the investigation about having really one voice, and that they made a lot of decisions during the investigation to do things or not to do things regarding help, reaching out to the public and having the public help them during the investigation. And we wanted some answers to there. I came in with five pages of answers of questions, and we walked out with not much being answered at all. The second part was communication. They've done a really poor job of communicating with the Goncalves family, and most of the families. And so we wanted to make sure that they were now aware that what our expectations were, that it's the investigation, the families, and then the media. The Goncalves family should never hear anything on a press release or social media release or anything like that we don't know of first. Yeah, I mean, I hope they're receptive. I hope that they are mature enough to be able to take some criticism and understand some of the expectations and that we have. And I wasn't popular when I left that meeting by any means.
Now, he did indicate that he's taking them at their word when they say that they're hopeful the investigation is moving forward. He said it's not his job to be critical, but to merely express concerns that the family is having. Having said that, we do have to talk about his stance on the coroner. I'm talking about Leta County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt, because according to Steve Goncalves, Mabbutt revealed very gruesome details of the killings to him, and that she herself, we know, has spoken to the media talking about the toxicology reports, the extreme nature of the case, the possible murder weapon. Mr. Gray was not too happy about her comments.
Well, I mean, I have issues with the coroner. Number one, expressing all of her opinions over the media at, I think, at inappropriate times, number one. Number two, making a personal phone call and describing graphic details of what she discovered and what she to the family, I don't think was beneficial in any way. I don't think she did it out of a place of spite. I think she did it because she was, trying to give them more details. But once you hear certain details, it's not helpful to the family and certain things. So, and I could go on and on about the coroner. The idea that she's a criminal defense attorney at the same time that she's a coroner, I think could present a conflict down the road. And the fact that she's continuing to defend people during this investigation. And she's done it before. I mean, the fact is that there was she was involved in she was a coroner on a murder investigation in Moscow years ago, and she also was the defense counsel on the case, which blows my mind.
Yeah, that conflict of interest could be a problem, for sure. That case that he mentioned, we believe, is the James Curtis Leonard case. You can definitely check it out to see Mabbutt's role there. But he wasn't shy about criticizing her actions. Now, he did say that law enforcement hasn't indicated a suspect to the family, that they're keeping things close to the vest, including about that white Hyundai Elantra that police had asked the public's help in identifying. They said it was near the crime scene at the time of the killings. Anything anybody knows about the car or the occupants of the car. I will tell you this, according to Angenette, the Moscow County Police informed her that they are getting useful tips on that Hyundai Elantra.
Well, through our tips, through our leads, some of the evidence that came in, we start to identify patterns. And like we said earlier, we are confident that the occupant or occupants of that vehicle have information that's critical to this investigation. We also understand that even though there's sometimes a fascination with a particular case, some people simply don't see the news and may not know that we're looking for it. So if we get the word out there, hey, maybe your neighbor has one in the garage that they don't drive very often. Maybe there's one that's just not on the registration database. Let us know. So far, we have a list of approximately 22,000 registered white Hyundai Elantras that fit into our criteria that we're sorting through. That's an awful lot of information, but it may not be all of them. So the public can help us with that.
And Mr. Gray finally said that the reason a reward hasn't been put out for more information is because police were concerned that it's too early in the investigation to do that, that if they put out a reward, there could be a flood of non-useful information and leads. And as we continue to report on this case, we encourage anyone with useful information to call the tip line, the Moscow County Police tip line at 208-883-7180. You can email tipline@ci.moscow.id.us, and digital media submissions can go to fbi.gov/Moscow, Idaho. And that's all we have for you, everybody, here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.